So the Sacred Space Clearing Workshop, the history behind it is kind of interesting. So if you guys would mind, I'm going to share a little bit of why I'm here and how I find myself standing up in front of you. Would that be okay? So I've been a designer my whole life. Some of you guys actually know me, so bear with me for repeating myself, but some of you don't know my history. But I'm one of those rare birds who have actually been a designer forever. So my first degree is in interior architecture. So I'm a #1 interior designer. It is the #1 second career in the world, being an interior designer. I, however, am one of those weird people who've done it my entire life. And I had a minor in psychology because my whole way of thinking about it was that I wanted to look at the way spaces and people interacted. So I was really intrigued with this from an early on age. So I did that, and that was fantastic, and I jumped into the corporate world. And in the corporate world, I got to work with people, mainly in building spaces, working spaces, environments. And all the big boys sat there and they talked about the way that they were looking at how people interacted with their spaces. And I thought that was great, and I was enthusiastic, and I was young, and I was in my career, and it was like, this is really great. And then it dawned on me, I started to see a pattern. You know what that pattern was? The corporations were more concerned with their bottom line. They cared about us fitting as many people into a cubicle that we possibly could. So I worked in that, and I tried to make a difference, and I worked really, really hard. And I was a project manager, and I worked my way up, and I ended up being an account executive. And I was working in Europe, and I had a team of 10 people, and I felt like I was making somewhat of a difference. But it was heart-wrenching because the difference was so small. So I ended up jumping ship and really seeing if I could look inside myself and figure out what it was that I wanted to do and how I could really make a difference in the world. And thus I started my own company. It was about 11 years ago. So Estley Wright Limited Holistic Design got started, and that was to have a business that was based in creating design for people, human beings, and how they were going to live in their spaces, and how that could work in a completely different way than the corporate structure and what I had been working with. So I was breaking all the molds and trying to figure out what I was doing, and so I ended up adding a whole bunch of different things to my repertoire. And one of those was reflexology, and another was aromatherapy, and we have an aromatherapist as well, someone who works with essential oils in here. And that started awakening a way of thinking, the holistic approach to how we should all be living our lives, realizing that the corporate world was very silo-oriented. Does any of you know what I mean? Like, just completely everything in our life is very segregated and separate. So I wanted design to have a different approach. It's totally different than that. So aromatherapy, reflexology, but the glue that I ended up pulling it all together with was Feng Shui. So I ended up meeting this amazing man, and his name was Professor Thomas Lin Yun. And he, His Holiness, was a Grand Master of Feng Shui, and he brought Feng Shui from the East to the West. And his philosophy is part of the Black Sect Tantric Buddhist philosophy. So what that is different schools of Feng Shui. For those of you who don't know what Feng Shui is about, it is about creating spaces and understanding that our environments are such that we can manipulate them to improve the quality of our life. And so Thomas Lin Yun's approach was so amazing to me because it was all the things that I had been thinking but not being able to implement in the architectural and interior design and construction world. So I was really excited to have all of that, and I worked with him for 3 years to pull together how the architectural world and the holistic world could come together and really start to create a methodology of designing spaces. So I give you all of that to help you understand that there is the invisible and the physical worlds. And I find myself up here in front of you talking about something that I would consider a little woo-woo, right? Sacred space clearing. So we're talking about clearing spaces and clearing energy. And the interesting thing is it wouldn't have been my first choice of a workshop, but I felt compelled because 2012 has been a really interesting year for me. I don't know how many of you know that it's the year of the dragon. So in Chinese terms, we were brought in saying, oh, the year of the dragon is going to be a really rocky year. okay? We know about the Mayan calendar. Most of us have probably heard, you know, that the world's going to end on December 21st, 2012, because the calendar ends. Well, obviously, we don't all believe that, but there is that philosophy out there that something big is about to happen in this year. So 2012, from my own personal experience, a lot of things have been happening. And I strapped on my seatbelt and I've gone for the roller coaster ride. And with that, I started being asked to do more space clearings than I have ever been asked to do in my entire career. With that, the kind of recognition that I wanted to be able to teach other people how to do it. That felt like I was compelled to help you guys figure out how to do what I can do for you, but I'd like you guys to take this as a gift to figure out how to do it for yourself. Because I'm feeling energetically, the world needs to have their energy clear so you can show up in your power, doing your authentic work, doing whatever it is that you want to do the best that you can. So of course, I'm still doing space clearings, and I'll give you a little bit of a history of how I came to it in a few minutes. However, I want you guys to be able to understand all of this for yourself. And I want to take also a minute right now and say thank you to you guys for showing up. We're in the middle of a storm, right? You know, we act like we've never seen snow before, but I understand that energetically it's so appropriate that we are here tonight together talking about energy in spaces in the middle of New York City. I call it the epicenter of the epicenter, right? We've got a lot of energy. We're on a big island of granite, and we just survived Sandy, right? Big hurricane, massive amounts of energy, a lot of residual energy still hanging around in the city and in the environment we're living in right now. And we're in the middle of a storm that's kind of tacking on top of that. So to me, it really felt very synergistic that I had picked this date, you know, to have this workshop that was kind of, you know, pushing me out of my comfort zone, frankly. You know, I like to be the corporate architect sometimes, and, you know, I'm an interior architect and I have a minor in psychology, and then I got the woo-woo side. So I'm still imperfect. I'm still working to create the holistic balance with who I am. And now I see the perfectness of this. I see the synergy, that this has to be the perfect time to be giving you guys this gift, because after Sandy and in the middle of the Northeastern, you guys still showed up here despite all of that. And I really applaud you, and I think you should applaud yourselves for actually taking action, because success is all about showing up and taking action. So thank you guys. Yay. I'm going to share with you guys a little bit of a story about why space clearing became important to me. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what space clearing is, why you should do it, how you should do it, and then I'm going to share with you guys 4 methods that I have figured out over the 23 years that I've been operating as a designer and a holistic person and looking at things. So I've found, researched, and created and made my own 4 methods that I'm going to share with you guys tonight. And then I'm going to help you guys figure out which one of those methods resonates with you. And I'm going to help you guys figure out how you can do this for yourselves going forward. Does that sound like a good plan? Thanks. So my story starts with about 12 years ago. I lived in London. I was a corporate architect, and I had a job where I was an account executive, and I had 10 people working for me, and I lived in a house that was almost 200 years old. And I was in love with my house. It was so beautiful. It was a 4-story brownstone in this cute little square, and the square was filled with daffodils, and it was fantastic. I was in love with the house the moment I met it. So in love. And it was really great. And I moved in and I decorated it and I made it completely my own. And it didn't matter that the roof was leaking, or that the security system broke, or that the wall kept cracking. There was a pattern that I was missing. And so I just went on with my life, and I was like really full of myself, and everything was going well, and I really loved my house. But I didn't see the signs that the house didn't love me. And I wasn't paying attention to any of those really big signs. You ever have something happen in your life and you look backwards and hindsight is 20/20? Oh my God, you have those red flags all over the place, right? I ignored them all. Until one day I come home and it's raining outside, and if any of you have ever been to London, it rains a lot. So not unnormal, right? So it's raining, and I walk up into my bedroom, and the beautiful French chandelier over my bed is a fountain. And I remember standing in the door and looking at it and thinking, wow, that's really beautiful. I'm thinking something is so really wrong with this picture. And the ceiling was cracking down the middle, and the waterfall was coming out of the chandelier, and it was a real wake-up call for me that I couldn't ignore. A whole bunch of things started to explode in my life that made it so I could not ignore it. And I ended up selling the house in 6 weeks, moving back to New York in a couple other weeks, starting my company. I ended up making the decision to get rid of the house, to change the energy of where I was. And as soon as I changed that energy, my life changed. Voila! It seemed like a miracle. Now, what does that have to do with space clearing? The wake-up call was that the house was giving me signs that it had residual energy, 200 years of residual energy. And I didn't have any of the tools to figure this out. I subsequently started doing some research on the house. No one had lived in the house longer than 6 years. I'd only lasted 3. So the house had some stuff going on. Now, I'm not a ghost buster, right, at all. Sometimes people call me a house whisperer, but I am definitely not a ghost buster. So, you know, I didn't feel any ghosts in the house, I didn't feel anything, but there was definite energy in the house. The interesting thing is you can love a space. Doesn't necessarily mean it's right for you. There's just residual energy. That energy could have been shifted. I may not have had to go through the pain of what I did and have my whole life explode and disappear and move, sell that beautiful house that I loved, if I understood how to change the energy of the house. So it started me on this path of trying to understand what was going on. And it was a really great opportune moment when I met Thomas Lin Yoon, because he was like, yeah, of course, you could have changed that. And of course, I work more with his disciples than him. His main language is Mandarin, or was, bless him, he has actually passed a couple years ago. But his main disciples, the people who teach his work, were like, you could have changed that. Do you want to learn the tools of what it is that you could do to change the energy of a space so it can support you, so you can be congruent with the space? Yep, I'm on board. I want that. I don't ever want to have to go through that again. So it was a really important moment for me to wake up and see I can take control. I don't have to be a victim. I can allow myself to do something within that, within the framework. Now, the interesting thing, I'm a designer. I understand space, but I didn't really believe in the invisible until that moment. And here's the thing. Most of us, we live in a physical world. We live in a world where we touch things, and we are brought up with a system of you believe it when you see it. And interestingly enough, it's really the opposite. Because one of the most powerful things in our life that is invisible, that controls everything, is love. We can't touch love, but all of us in this room, I think that we could agree that we all believe in love, but it's invisible. So for me, understanding space, my entire work is physical space, designing the built environments that we live in, we sleep in, we eat in, we sometimes die in. That's my job. But the most important part of my work is all about the invisible part of those spaces. So the spaces that we live in, work in, eat in, sleep in, and sometimes die in, are built environments that are built by human beings. We are porous, energetic beings. And being that we're porous, energetic beings, guess what? We put our energy into the spaces. We leave energy behind. So that was what I learned about my house in London, that house had 200 years of other people's energy in it. And perhaps energy that wasn't working with my energy. And so I needed to release and learn how to release some of that energy. So as I started to learn and study and grow, and believe in the invisible more and more, I started to recognize that I could feel the energy in any space that I go into. So we started the whole workshop talking about you walk into a space and you know instantaneously, no matter how unwoo-woo you are, if a space doesn't feel good. You do. You can claim that it's because you don't like the carpet or the lighting's bad. And believe me, I've been in a lot of places, totally opinionated designer, that I'm like, oh, don't like that. But that's not what I'm talking about. You know when you walk into a beautiful space. Some people's homes gorgeous, and you're like, you don't feel comfortable. You sit on the edge of the sofa. You kind of want to leave immediately upon entering. It has a lot to do with the energy of the space. Now, it might not be the energy of the people who live in the space. It might be residual energy. But until you open up yourself to understand that that can affect how you live and affect everybody that comes into your space and learn how to manage that, you are allowing somebody else to drive your life. You're allowing other energies to take over. I want everybody in this room to be able to have spaces when you walk in and you're like, this is awesome. This feels so great. You sit on that sofa, you want to lay back, you want to put your feet up, you want to have another glass of wine. You want to feel like this is so great. You want to also have the ability, being a small business owner, right? Where people come into your office and they go, great energy. So we, right now, are in a very successful business. Artistic Tile, hugely successful business. Gorgeous. Wouldn't you agree that it's like an amazingly beautiful space? The energy of the space is different than the beauty. This place is so amazing because the people in the space are fantastic. Their customer service, bar none, is like, I've been in this business for a really long time. These guys are awesome. The energy of this space completely resonates with that. But I'll give you an example of how the residual energy can hang around in a space. If there was a client and came in and they had a conflict with somebody in the front entrance, and the manager and the client were having a conflict, that energy is in the space. It stays in the space. Now, energy is cumulative. So you have a good thing that happens after that, kind of covers up the negative energy. If you repeat the negative, i.e. you talk about it over and over and over again, that is as if the negative is happening over and over and over again. It's kind of a really valuable lesson to think about. Our thoughts are extremely powerful. The energy in spaces is not just the actual event, it's the reliving of an event. Because if you relive an event, it is as if it's happening again and again and again. And it's important to hold that in your back of your mind while we're going through the space clearings to think about that. So I would say my experience in doing space clearings, often in homes that are really old, hold on to energy that has a sadness to it. And the sadness is often because people are replaying the sadness. It's not that it was just a sad event. Life is a beginning, middle, and an end, right? We are human beings, and these vessels are temporary, right? So we get that. We've just lived through Sandy. There is tragedy. There is stuff that happens, the murky, sticky stuff that happens in our life. It's part of life. Reliving the murky stuff just makes it murkier. So I've been in a lot of houses that the one element, the one time something happened in it, has stuck around and become really thick because the people haven't let go of it. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind while we're going through the rest of the stuff here, to think about how often you hold on to things that could actually be let go of, and know that you are in control of that as well. So the first thing we talked about is recognizing the invisible has power, right? Know that. The second thing is understanding not only do you have the power to break it up, you also have the power not to let it control you. So reliving it or not reliving it, pretty key things. So why would you want to do a space clearing? Would anybody want to kind of, I think I've given you some ideas, but anybody want to throw out why you would want to do a space clearing? I'm looking right at you. Because you're like thinking.
Many reasons. Say you had someone who lived in your space that you just moved into, that wasn't a particularly positive person, you just feel that when you move in, you just want to give yourself a fresh start.
That's great.
And just have your mark on that place rather than have someone else's residual hanging about.
Beautiful, beautiful. Great answer. Thank you. Anybody else?
Don't you think that because I work with clearing and clear yourself, because a lot of people wear, crystals, or they're using crystals to heal, etc., and if you're working with somebody who's anyone who is pranic healing will also clear their crystals and clear themselves, but you have to be clear yourself before you can help anyone else. And those crystals, I never knew that either for a long period of time, that those crystals absorb the negative energy. You'll see a clear crystal change if you're working with it.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
And so forth. So you have to also clear yourself. So why not clear also the surroundings that you're in?
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for that, because the interesting side effect of space clearing is it clears you. Every one of my rituals can actually be done to clear yourself as well. And it's so perfect to say that, because I started clearing me, not quite seeing the big picture. Anyone else think of a reason why they would want to clear a space? I mean, John's was great and yours was great. Does anyone else have something they want to add to it?
I would think for me, it would be a good process of just kind of cleansing, and because I have a lot of stuff that I've had for a long time that I don't need anymore, and it has all the experiences and good, bad, or whatever attached to them, and so I'm feeling like, as I'm trying to move into a different phase of my life, I really need to find a way to get rid of those things that aren't gonna help me to the next level. And I feel pulled down by them.
Yeah, beautiful. That's really key, letting go. Letting go.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, I haven't lived in very many places my entire life. I think I've been in 4 places.
Wow, amazing.
Really interesting. And I was thinking about growing up in the apartment that I lived in. And it was, I don't know how old the building was. I don't know if it was a pre-war building, but it was an older building in Brooklyn. And how I think I've taken the energy of that space with me to every apartment that I lived in, including the current one, which I lived in for many years and moved into with my ex-husband.
Interesting.
And I think that I've actually, so I can understand for myself how clearing my own space would be a major difference for me.
Yeah.
I think my history goes back to the first place I grew up in.
I can believe that. You know how I was saying that the spaces in which we live in, we're energetic beings, and so we put it, and we can take it with us and carry it with us. It's funny, I'm working on a book right now that is my biography, but it's going to be told through the houses and apartments that I've lived in. Not anything to really do with me. It's going to all be analysis of the spaces that I've lived in, because I think that's really interesting. So the fact is that will be an incredibly powerful moment for you to do that, because it's almost more powerful for you to do the clearing for yourself, to open it up.
I mean, and not only that, I can see the history of myself in this apartment, because I moved in with my ex-husband. Prior to getting married, we got married, and then we got divorced. So there's a whole lot of energy that's there that, and I keep wondering why I wake up exhausted every day. I can say that I really believe that the space that I live in is exhausting me.
Well, it's funny, energy can drain you or boost you. It's like a double-sided coin. And understanding, and part of why I'm doing this workshop is because I learned that the energy, certain things were not supporting me. Like the house that I was in love with, right, did not support me. Like I was energetically drained all the time. And it spit me out after 3 years. Thank God, So yes, the power of understanding that the energy is doing it is like a really big first step. Recognizing you want to let go so you can live in the now, the power of now. So I have a reading list over there to share with you guys, because I thought there are a couple books that have profoundly changed my life and helped me get to this point. One of them is Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. When I read that book, it was really profound for me, and I don't know if anyone in this audience has read it. But the essence of the book is recognizing the majority of people live in the past. So I'm a recovering perfectionist, I'm admitting it. Anybody who knows me in the audience, right? I'm working really hard not to beat myself up about what I could have, should have done. So I'm imperfect and I'm working really hard to be a person that lives in the now. Let go of the past. But I also realized for a long time I was also like, I'm a fire horse. I love the future. I'm all excited about where I'm going. So I can live a lot in the future too. Whereas in essence, we really, really only have right now. So the power of now, which I read my books over and over and over again, because as my team will tell you, one of Eliism is you can only see what you can see when you can see it. So I read the books over and over and over again so I can get different things, different learnings, and different layers of where I am. So understanding how important it is to be here, let go. Great reason to do a space clearing. If you were married in that house and you're now divorced, excellent reason. Excellent reason to set yourself free from the past so you can be right here, so you can create what you want to create. Or you have the space to create what you want to space. How awesome is that? You have the space to create whatever it is that you want to create instead of letting the past control where you're going. I did a vision board at the beginning of this year, and the big mantra for it was create the space and a bigger life will happen. And it was something that really got channeled to me at that moment. John was with me, and that has been my mantra for the entire year. Create the space and a bigger life will happen. Ironic that that was my mantra for the year, and I am now doing a workshop on space clearings, right? So interesting, or not so ironic. So we now kind of know that space clearing is about the reason you would do one is you're opening up for a better life, right? You're creating the space to do something better. I like to believe that everybody that's sitting in this room is here because you'd like to have the most awesome life. You'd like to figure out what tools you can put into your tool belt to improve yourself going forward. And you're all on a quest, because you wouldn't be sitting in this space, because I believe that everything happens for a reason. You wouldn't have found yourself here if you weren't looking for something to help you hone it. We probably all have really great lives. We've made it here. We've forged through the storm. We survived Sandy. We're here on a quest. So that is one of the reasons why a space clearing is really important. It creates more space. I'm a Feng Shui specialist, and I talked a little bit about what it is. Another reason to do a space clearing is because any work that you do, any deeper work that you do, a space clearing before it is just going to enhance it, which is a great thing to think about. So often I do a space clearing prior to doing a Feng Shui consultation because it creates more room and clean energy, so when we go in to do some work, we can really get into the nitty-gritty and get rid of some of the murky stuff. It's kind of like taking away the veils. So you take away some of the veils, you can see some more stuff. And that's the whole idea. And the other reason that I think is really great is that you remove blockages that you can see and you can't see. So I just have the pleasure of working with somebody who helps me see what I can't see. I'm going to say it's not always a pleasant experience. You have to be willing to see it. I know I've got blockages. Those aren't the blockages he's helping me with. He's helping me with the ones I don't even know. Space clearings are about that. It's about opening yourself up to the possibility that there's a whole bunch of invisible things that you want to remove. So I obviously believe in space clearings, right? I think that they're really, really important. And the reason I think they're important is that I tell you about my house in London, and that opened up my eyes to the invisible. I also work on renovation projects. Voila, this is what I do for a living. I design spaces for people. And I started to see a pattern. It was like a bell curve. Beginning of a project, everybody's really happy and they love you, and you come up with this really great design, and you design the budget, and you got all these beautiful tiles, and you know what the schedule's going to be. And about halfway in the project, everybody's fighting. There's the contractor who's like making the client crazy, and then the client decides that they don't like you and they're going to blame you. It doesn't matter that you're on schedule. Doesn't matter that you're on budget. Doesn't matter that the implementation of the design is exactly as you had approved. Somewhere in the middle of the project, everybody gets really freaky. So I got the great idea to start doing space clearings because I was kind of not really happy with this energy thing going on. So I started doing space clearings to manage the energy. And it worked. Now, I was a skeptic. I worked on Wall Street. I worked for Giuliani. I was a corporate architect. I was like, but it worked. So I started doing these space clearings, and the clients were a lot calmer. The contractors didn't fight with me as much, And we could manage the surgery on their nest. So there's always going to be a lot of energy when someone's doing a renovation project. You're stirring up a lot of stuff, that residual energy, but also emotional energy. And there's a lot of fear associated with spending money, that kind of stuff in our society. So all that's going to happen. Managing that was so great. So I was doing it kind of on my own. I was clearing myself. I'd clear myself. You'll see with some of my sprays, one of my methods. So I'd walk in, clear, or I'd get out of a really murky meeting and I'd clear my energy. So I saw this was really powerful stuff that people started seeing the difference. So then I started giving the clients the sprays and then it started snowballing. So it was like, this stuff works. This is amazing. And as I shared with you at the beginning, I've been doing space clearings so much in 2012. I don't even know how people know I do space clearings because it's not on my website. It's not something I advertise. It's something that just happens as a part of what I do. So I find it really interesting. Again, very synergistic. Probably not, there's no coincidences in life, right? So that understanding of why you need to do it and how you need to do it is really important. For me, helping manage my work was great because it was a lot more fun. You didn't have unhappy clients and you didn't have that contractor that always happens. You see it on television, right? Disaster projects. Not saying that my projects are all perfect, because they aren't. But boy, do I love having a tool in my tool belt to be able to manage them a lot better. So how do you do a space clearing? Or how often should you do a space clearing? I'm going to say minimum once a year, you should do a space clearing. It depends on your calendar, depends on your life, whether or not you're going to do it on the New Year or you're going to do it on the Chinese New Year. I would say at a minimum, it is a good idea to do a space clearing once a year. I personally would say do it at your home and your office space. These are the spaces that you are in the most. And if you're anything like me, you're in your office a lot, right? It's not necessarily even a 50-50. So the places that you spend the most time, good idea to do it at a minimum once a year. I'm a big believer in saying that you really should do them once every season. As a Feng Shui specialist and as a holistic practitioner, I see every season. I welcome in every season. I change my home. So doing a space clearing at that moment would be super, super important. Really great to just check in with yourself and say, hey, do I need to do a space clearing? Because you can do a general space clearing for your entire space at the beginning of the year and check in 3 months later and decide that you need to just do a space clearing for one particular area of your house, depending on what's blocked. So I had a client who we did a space clearing in her house. 3 months later, she wanted to do a space clearing just for her daughter's bedroom because her daughter had started middle school and she was having a hard time. Her grades weren't doing so good. So we just did a space clearing for her daughter's bedroom in the area where her daughter did her homework. So you don't have to always do space clearings everywhere, but it's, I'm going to say, cumulative effect, right? It's a good idea to do them more often than not. And here's a great analogy. Anyone out in the audience who knows me, I don't like to clean. It's like my least favorite thing. Very organized person. My house looks clean because it's so organized, but I don't like to clean. But boy, would it be easier to clean if I cleaned on a regular basis, right? I also say like weeding your garden. If you weed a little bit all the time, it's much easier. Space clearing is exactly the same way. So how often you do a space clearing also is going to depend on how murky is your space and how regular you want to do it. So if you do it less often, you're going to need to spend a little bit more time because you're going to have a little bit more murky energy to get rid of. But if you do it more regularly, it's going to be a little bit easier. So it all depends on what your needs are. How often to do it? Up to you. Minimum once a year. Recommendation? Do it every season. And here is a kicker. Always do a space clearing after a big event. Good event, and especially a not so good event. So we've just had Sandy. We live in a city that has been traumatized. Energetically, I am sure everyone in this room felt the effects of Sandy. Energetically. So we can say physically in our physical world, yes, you had the wind and you had the rain and you had the flooding and you didn't have power and all of that kind of stuff. But energetically, the fear that was vibrating through the city was palpable, right? You could touch it. People were arguing in the streets. People were running around with their heads down. Babies weren't able to sleep. There was a very high vibration going on in the city. Perfect time to do a space clearing, people, to get rid of that really not so positive energy, to get rid of it, snap it, go away. Beautiful tool to be able to walk away with tonight going, okay, I'm done with Sandy. She's a memory. You know, it's like so great to me. You know, there are lots of events that happen in our life that I would say would be a great thing to use a space clearing. You know, sometimes you hear somebody has an unwelcome illness, or you lose a job, or you have a breakup. These are all moments in life that would be nice to release the energy instead of holding on to it for a really, really, really long time, because it doesn't serve us to hold on to things that are not positive. So these are the reasons I would say to do it and how often I think that you should do space clearings. So now I'm going to share with you briefly how to prepare, and then I'm going to go into the meat of tonight, and I'm going to tell you my 4. So in preparation for a space clearing, you need to clean the space. I'm going to say my biggest obstacle to doing regular space clearings, right? Because I don't like cleaning. I said that, right? You need to clean your space. Scrub it. So if you're doing a space clearing in your house, you need to clean the whole house. And the cleaner it is, the more you're honoring of the whole ritual that you're going into. So scrub it. You want to be able to eat out of your sink. You want everything to be clean. The reason for it is you don't want the energy to be on those dust balls or that dirt. When you do the clearing, you want it to clear the invisible energy, not the physical energy. The second thing is you want to clean yourself. You want to take the ritual seriously. Care about that you're going into something. And then we'll get into my real thing. All my team will tell you I have a quality of intention. Everything about what I do is based on that statement. What is the quality of your intention? So go into this with intention to clear the energy and make the space. So in doing that, honor yourself. I have a great story when I was really young. And in high school, one of my best friend's mother was a very successful entrepreneur, and she ran a business, and her name was Mrs. Bickerton. And Mrs. Bickerton said that she would never hire anybody who didn't have really clean fingernails, filed and trimmed and done fingernails. Now, I was like, I don't do my fingernails. You know, I still don't do my fingernails. But I remember saying, why? Why would you not ever hire anybody who doesn't do their fingernails? Seemed like a crazy thing as a teenager, especially a teenager who didn't do her fingernails. And she said, if they do not take care to clean their fingernails for an interview, I am not going to trust that they're going to care about the details of my business enough. And I thought, yes, I understand that. Tijara Becker is somebody that I've been studying with in the last couple of years, and he says how you do anything is how you do everything. So for your space clearing, make sure that you clean your space and you clean yourself. And you set yourself up for a ritual. Comfortable clothes, clean clothes, something that you feel good in. There's a whole other workshop on making sure that you're congruent with who you are. I was not always congruent with who I was. If you saw me in corporate America, I had short bob red hair and I dressed like a man. And I was called the Dragon Queen. And that was who I was at that moment, who was not congruent with the person that I am now. That's a whole other workshop. But you want to make sure that you're congruent with who you are when you're doing this ritual. The third thing that you want to do, which is really important, is make sure that you have all of your supplies. Everything that you need to do the ritual should be gathered in advance. Now, I have space clearing kits that I bring with me when I go to my clients, right? And I do a meditation to figure out what it is that I want to bring with them, and I have a little bag, right? And I have some ideas about helping you guys with some space clearing tools so you can walk out tonight to be able to do it. And the idea is to help you have your own space clearing kit. So the things that you really need is once we go through the methods, you're going to figure out which method resonates with you. So you're going to need your primary tool, whether it's sage or oranges or sprays, whatever that is. But there are a couple other things that you actually need for the ritual. So if you were doing a salt clearing ritual, you would need a bowl. If you're doing a sage, you would need something to catch the ashes and matches. Ashes and matches. So you would also need to have a journal to write down what your intention is. So there's a variety of things that you need to make sure that you have all in one place. My recommendation is honor them all with what this ritual is. And also, it's just easier. You don't have to think about running around and getting a pen or matches or a bowl. All these things are dedicated to the ritual in one place, so you can do it on a regular basis. Consistency is a really key thing here as well. And I'm going to say that the great thing about doing your own kit is that it makes it an easier part of your day-to-day life. And energetically, it becomes like brushing your teeth or brushing your hair. And for me, my purpose really in doing this is to help you guys help yourselves. I mean, I do space clearings. You can call me up, I'm happy to do one for you. But I really want to help and impress upon you how important this is to do on a regular basis. Not just when something big is going on, but on a regular basis. And so having this already set up leads you to success. You're putting the success path right there for yourselves. So it's a really good thing to just make sure you've got all the tools, because then you're ready to chop down the tree, or whatever other analogy I can come up with. The journal is about writing down your intention. So a few minutes ago, I was just talking about the quality of your intent. Everything is important because you need to think about what it is that you're doing. So I studied with a gentleman by the name of John Kehoe, and he does a book who's also on my reading list, who's an amazing man, and he is all about mind power. The thoughts that we have in our head are forces, right? Very powerful. We've all heard of The Secret, right? Anyone in this room not hear of The Secret? You've all heard of The Secret, right? So with that, our thoughts are really powerful. So we want to write down in our journals what it is that our intentions are. So I'm getting a vibration from the room that we might need to do a little bit of a state change here, because you might look like you're getting a little bit tired. So I'm going to ask you guys, and I think that someone has some paper that they can pass out. I'd love all of you guys, having listened to me ramble on here about space clearing and why I love it, I'd love you guys to just take a few minutes to write down what your intention would be as why you personally would want to do a space clearing. Now, something in your home or your office that would need to be shifted, and understand what it is that you want to shift in regards to it. And again, understanding the quality of your intent is really key here. So the clearer you are about what it is that you want to shift, the more success you're going to have. So we're passing around paper, and I don't know if everybody or anybody has a pen. Does anybody need a pen? And just give you a few minutes to just think about why you would want, and then I'm going to ask you guys to share, if anybody has any volunteers afterwards. So keep that in mind. I'm going to just give you guys a few minutes. Do you need something, a pen? No? You're good? Okay. So I appreciate you guys and honor you for writing down and taking the few minutes to think inside about what it is, the quality of your intent, why you would want to do a space clearing for yourself. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to actually raise their hand and offer their reasoning? What? Great.
All of mine, or just one?
Why don't you give us one to start with?
to clear any negative energy that prevents me from achieving my goals.
Excellent. That's beautiful. Succinctly put. Thank you very much.
Space clearing will help me bring a sense of order and more subconsciously focus in all areas of my life.
Nice. I like that. I like the word of the subconscious there. It's like really pulling into a very powerful part of what the work is that we're working on. Great. I think I see you back there. Hi.
So mine comes with a bit of a story. I am a two-time cancer survivor, and just was a month ago in a remission, which is great. And just yesterday I went to see the counselor.
Wow.
And I've been a skeptic about intuitive counseling in the past. I went to see this guy a year ago, and he gave me some good insight. And yesterday when I saw him, he knew nothing about my cancer. He mentioned that a lot of things in my life have been in limbo. And he says, you know, the good news is they're all floating around you. But it's missing our anchors. And even without knowing I'm coming to this session, and in fact I didn't even think about the session until I was coming here tonight, and I was really sad. He said, how's your home? And I said, my home is great. I have a wonderful friend who designed me. That's very good. That's way back there. And I said, I love my home. And he said, yeah, there's something isn't completely right. I don't know exactly what it is, but if you can think about that, maybe get an expert to come by, because all these things are floating around you, and they want to settle. Energy around you is not anything.
Interesting. Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. I don't believe in coincidences. So lovely to meet you. So I'm glad that you're here. So everything is perfect. Great. Thank you so much for sharing. It sounds like you're on board with understanding the reasons why and a little bit of the how. So why don't I share with you 4 methods that I have figured out. And the idea is I'm going to share with you these methods that I have figured out, researched, and made my own over the last 23 years or 45 years, depending on how you want to look at it. Of all the stuff that I've accumulated. So there's 4 different methods that I really use that are in my tool belt. A whole bunch more, but you know, we'd be here until midnight if I was giving you them all. So the 4 that I'm going to talk about, there's a salt clearing ritual. There is a sage ritual. There's an orange peel ritual. And then there is the sacred sprays. So those are the 4 that I'm going to talk to you a little bit about. So the first one I want to share with you is really the newest one into my tool belt. So you know, it's like your shiny new toy. So it's the one that I'm the most excited about right now, because I believe it's like peeling back an onion when you get to learn new things. And as somebody who feels like I'm a perpetual student, it's great to find yourself finding new things that energetically shift your life. So my most recent one is I have found salts. And part of that is Esther, and you'll see the whole table back there is with salts, because I started finding that myself getting totally shifted energetically using Himalayan salts. We were also talking about I started my space clearing, doing space clearing on myself. And it moved into understanding how that really could shift in spaces and how beautifully congruent that ended up being, the fact that I'm a space designer needing to actually understand holistically that the spaces hold the energy. So the salts are really, really amazing. Salts are so historically prevalent. My doctor a couple years ago, I went to my doctor, I was feeling a little tired, and my doctor said a couple things to me that after she did all these tests. And one, she said that I needed to eat red meat. Or she told me my vegetarian diet wasn't working for me, and I said I wasn't a vegetarian. And she said, your vegetarian diet's not working for you. I was like, okay, I get it. And then she said, you need to have more salt in your diet. And it was interesting, and I was like, I never cook with salt, because I was kind of brought up to think salt was bad for me. So I never cooked with salt, ever. Never thought about it. So it opened up my eyes to cooking with really good salt. And she had told me a story that you need salt to live. And how she had put it was really highlight the pain about how there was a torture that was done by removing salt from diets and what that actually did to people. I was like, oh, didn't realize that you could die from not having salt. So it put salt into a whole different place for me. It's like water. It's the essence of life. You can't live without it. I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to start paying attention to this. I'm going to start looking at this. As a holistic person, I was kind of shocked at how I had blocked it out. You can only see what you can see when you can see it. My mother's voice telling me salt was bad, sodium was bad, had overridden everything else I had learned. I hadn't paid attention. So it was really great to like have that awakening. And with that, eating salt, I started waking up to seeing bath salts and started doing baths. I'm an aromatherapist as well, so I do a lot of energy cleaning with my own essential oils. I make my own shampoo, my own body lotions, and I take a lot of baths with essential oils to shift my energy. Himalayan salts, amazing. Now there are other salts. I was just in Hawaii, and I was introduced to Hawaiian salts, also very spiritual. But what I loved was the history of salts. Salts, the word salt, I'm going to see if I can actually remember this. Salary. The word salt comes from salary, or salary comes from salt, because Roman soldiers were paid with salt, which is so cool to me. And then you start to see all of the religious and financial things that are connected to salt. So it's extraordinarily powerful. In almost every religion, there is some kind of ritual or symbol associated with salt. The Buddhists throw it over their shoulder so energy doesn't stick to your back. Judas knocked over a bowl of salt in the Last Supper and was considered really bad luck. Babies used to have salt wiped on their lips during baptisms. So there's all this really interesting, historic, ancient place where salt really played a very big role. In the modern world, we so often let go of our history. We have no idea why we do the things that we do, or why we say the things that we say, or the history and the origin of things. So when you start to unravel it, it becomes really apparent how important and sacred some of these things are. So I really started to fall in love with salts. And then I met Esther. And Esther and I have co-created some salts for a space clearing ritual. Now, as a Feng Shui specialist, you do salt rituals. There are lots of ways to infuse it. Salt is extraordinarily porous, so it pulls in the energy. So you're talking about crystals. Crystals do the same thing. These are from the earth, and with that as a natural substance being porous, what they can do is they pull in the negative energy and dispel it, get rid of it. How nice is that? It's so beautiful. It's like a cleaning thing, you know? So I look at it as a little energy purifier. So I recommend in the space clearing with the salts that I have some information that you guys don't need to take notes, because you have a whole ritual. I've written down instructions for all 4 of these. And I'm going to also let you guys at the end of this, I'm going to help you figure out which one of these 4 resonates with you. So just to keep that in the back of your mind. With the salts, Esther and I created a series of salts that you can use for the space clearing. And one of the reasons why Esther and I totally resonated together is because not only is she an interior designer and an entrepreneur, but she also is working with the 5 elements. So there are 5 different salts to choose from that are all infused with a variety of different essential oils that pull out the essence of each of the 5 elements. And the 5 elements is a whole other workshop that I'm doing on 5 elements. It has to do with Feng Shui and design and balance and harmony. But all you really need to know is that there are 5 elements that you will be drawn to one more than the other about balancing or clearing your energy at this exact moment. So we've got fire, earth, water, metal, and, help me.
Air. Air.
It isn't space. It is air. Yeah. Woo! So yeah, so we've got those 5. And so the essence in each one of these is very different depending on where you are at this moment. And there's no right or wrong. And there's kind of a fun process back there to help you figure out, if you don't know which one you're intuitively pulled towards, which one you need. I mean, I have all of them and a couple special other ones that I use in regards to it. So how you would do the space clearing with salt is you're going to want, in your space clearing kit, you would want a specialized bowl. Now this is a hand-carved soapstone bowl. I'm partial to this type of a bowl. I love the stone. I love it being of the earth. I love the essence of this color. And I want something about this size. Now it depends how big your space is. Now there are lots of other salt clearing rituals. This is a ritual I've made for me. This is something that I've pulled in holistically from all the areas of my life. So there are other rituals where you burn salt, and there are other rituals where you put salt in water. I use the salt in a way that the salt does the work for you. So what you're going to do is you're going to get some good quality. Everything in life should be good quality, right? Whether or not you're eating it or not. But salt is definitely one of those things that should be very high quality. You know, none of this processed salt for the ritual, none of that processed salt in your bodies either, please. But have salt that you put into the bottom of this beautiful bowl. And then you're going to take what I call the sacred salts. And the sacred salts are the ones that are really going to have the special magic, the energy of what it is that you want to infuse. This is going to be part of your intention. And that gets mixed in with the white salt here. And what you're going to do is you're going to then allow yourself, and there's a whole detailed ritual of how you're going to hold it. You're going to set the intention after you've written it in your journal, because putting pen to paper is really important. And then you're going to walk into the space that you want to have it cleared with. And you're going to go to the center of the space. You're going to set your intention. You're going to go to each of the corners, and you're going to start to see a pattern about how space clearing happens. And then you're going to set the salt where you want the salt to do the most work. And you're going to see that there are a couple areas that I'm going to recommend putting it in. There are two areas that I see over and over and over again that the salts do the most power. One is in the abundance gua, and one is in the relationship gua. These tend to be the areas that really need to have the most shifting, the most movement, to have the most power. So those are the ones that I'm recommending. The salts themselves are porous. They pull out the negative energy. I believe that this is really important to do. You're going to want to leave the salts there for a while, but because they are porous, they don't last forever. And depending on how murky your energy is, depending on how often you're doing this, is how often you need to change the salts. And there's a whole way of getting rid of the salts. You can throw it into the ocean or into the beach. If you live near either one of those, you can even put it back into the earth if you're so lucky. Those of us that live in Manhattan, you know, some of us just have to use, you know, the toilets, right? Just get rid of it that way. But you want to get rid of it. You do not want it in your house. The energy that gets absorbed into the salt is to go away from you. And never, ever, ever eat the salt after it's done a space clearing. You know, had that question asked. No, waste not, want not is a good thing, but not in this scenario. You know, these salts are specifically to help you shift the energy in regards to it. And the nice thing that I say with the salts is because there are 5 different elements, you can do them differently to balance different things. So it's a beautiful way of allowing the salts to do the energy for you. And they're very powerful. You can use salts in a bath as well. These salts do not change. You know, they can even be eaten if you want. The point is when you're using them for the sacred space clearing and you've done the clearing, you don't want to do that. Every one of these clearings that I'm saying for the space, while you're doing it, is also clearing your own energy. So the second method that I'm going to talk to you about has more to do with a Feng Shui ritual. And it has to do with oranges. And the essence of oranges, interestingly enough, also a lot of history with the orange. Have you ever walked into a bathroom in a public building? And what does it smell like? Oranges. Synthetic oranges, but oranges. Right? So there is like a history of oranges being clearing. Interesting, right? Vitamin C. Like, oh my God, you do not have to be a holistic person to be told it's winter, take vitamin C. People who are not even remotely holistic, who eat at McDonald's, talk about taking vitamin C in the winter, right? So there's like this whole, it's healthy. Oranges are healthy. So there's like this great history with oranges about why they're so good for us and they're so healthy for us and how they're gonna, you know, like the apple a day keeps the doctor away, but the oranges seem to make sure you never get a cold, right? There's something about that. And I love the fact that, you know, I'm not a citrus person. It's not my favorite smell. But I still associate it with clearing and cleaning. I believe that the Feng Shui traditions were the ones that really opened my eyes to the power and the magic of the orange. Every single Feng Shui school, and I study with one particular one, but they all are in agreement with the orange being a really powerful space clearing tool. I thought that was really intriguing. And again, I have taken the orange peel ceremony and I have made it my own. And I'm going to invite all of you to do the same thing, because the power of a ritual is the power of your intention. There are a lot of people that talk about mantras being really important. And mantras are like affirmations, usually in a foreign language. And I'm going to say this, I say them in English. Sanskrit is beautiful, and there is a vibration with it. It's a dead language. I want to live in the living. So there's no right or wrong, but I think that it's important to make things your own. Own them. If it doesn't work for you, if you don't like oranges, don't do the orange peel ceremony. I use all of these because when I do most of my space clearings, it's not about me. Most of it is for somebody else. So I always have to do a meditation to find out what it is that's appropriate for that space and what is going to help that person and the energy that needs to be shifted for them. But for you guys, I invite you to think about which one of these resonates with you. So the orange peeling ceremony, you get 9 oranges. And in your space clearing kit, I also recommend that you get some kind of platter or bowl or dish that is part of the ceremony. Consistency and having all the tools in your toolkit, really important. The oranges need to obviously be purchased fresh, specifically for the ceremony. And 9 is the number that I recommend. It's a very powerful number. There's a magic to 3. 3 times 3 is 9. So we recommend that you get 9 oranges. And what you do with the oranges, you actually peel. This one takes a little bit of work, a lot more work than the salt one. And you have to peel a little round coin shape out of every single one of these oranges. 9 coins out of each of the oranges. So anyone want to tell me how many little round orange peel coins you're going to have at the end of it? Excellent. Well done. So there's something magical about it. So you're going to peel all of these and you're going to set them on a dish. And I'm going to say my instructions are over there, but there are 2 ways that you can infuse it depending on what your intention is. Sometimes I take the orange peels on my dish and I place them in sunshine and I allow them to infuse with the sunshine and the moon for 24 hours. And then I will sprinkle the peels around the perimeter, the interior of the space in which you want to clear. And then you leave them there for 3 days. And then you pick them up and you get rid of them the same way you get rid of the salt. If you live near the ocean or you have a backyard or your toilet, right? It all depends on where you live and how you need to do it. Other traditions use orange water. Put the peels into water so you can spray it around. That's an alternative and that's nice. The peels are very powerful. Leaving them around the perimeter of the space is like creating a sacred space. It clears out everything and it stops anything from coming in that isn't meant to come in. And it has a way of getting everything that doesn't belong there to be absorbed into the peels and to disappear. So the orange is very powerful. I also am a big believer, I think I said this earlier, my mom plays a big role in my life. She's been gone for about 19 years, but boy, do I still hear so many of the things that she taught me. Waste not, want not. Okay, I don't know who else was brought up with that. Those oranges, I always eat them, right? I think it's really powerful during a ceremony to make sure that if you're using the rinds, the peel, to make sure that you use the oranges as well. Orange juice, great thing, or just eating, because 9 oranges is a lot, but 9 oranges makes a really nice glass of orange juice. That's it. So it's a good way of making sure that you're actually taking something inside of you too, and you're taking the time to do it. The thing I love about the orange peel ceremony is the fact that it does take time. And if you're doing it with somebody, it's a beautiful way of actually spending it together. If you do rituals with people, small chatter, not a good idea. It's a very sacred time. You're going to see in the notes that it's all about having a visualization of what it is that your intention is. So we talk in Feng Shui a little bit about how you connect heaven, human, and earth together. So there's a whole visualization that you do and the physicality of what you're doing and the intention that you're holding in your mind and you're vocalizing out. So you're encompassing all of you, the invisible and the physical, together in each one of these rituals. I tend to do the orange one with the clients that like to participate in the ritual and like to have their hands involved in it. So you see the salts is a little bit more passive, whereas the orange ritual is a little bit more getting your hands dirty, so to speak. So the third ritual I'm going to talk to you about is sage. And I'm going to say sage has another great history to it. And most of us have probably heard of it, you know, somehow in the Native Americans seem to use sage a lot in their space clearing. You have the sweat lodges, right? There's been a lot of stuff in the media about sweat lodges and the people out west where you would have these ceremonies where you would go in and there's sage usually used in the sweat lodges. But the Druids and the Celts also used sage a lot with what they were doing. And they did it as a very healing property. So sage not only has a space clearing ceremonial aspect to it, it has a whole physicality of how it can help heal wounds. It helps stop blood flow during the moment of crisis or trauma. There's a whole bunch of other things in regards to it besides the spiritual qualities that make sage such an amazing space clearing element. Now there are different varieties of sage. I don't know if anyone's a gardener here. And so when I was in London, I had a garden and I had tons of sage. None of that sage was the sage that you use for space clearings. So sage really is, the sage that you use for the ceremonies is a white sage. And I could try to say the name, but I'd embarrass myself. So there is a Latin name, you know, that's white sage, but you'll know when you're going. We've got some white sage that I have sourced. I take a long time to find sources for the things that I like. I try out a lot of different things, and so this is from the West Coast. It is from Big Sur and is large bundles of dried white sage. And so you're going to know, though, you can get it. You need to go to a specific place that is all about ceremonial white sage. It is not the sage that you use in your kitchen. It's a totally different type of sage. So why that is I just believe that the properties of the white sage are the ones that create the smudging effect, that have the drying, because all the sage is dried, bundled together, and put into something that they call a smudging stick. And smudging is the name in which they use, and I love the sage for that reason, because it is almost like you are wiping away or burning all of the energy that doesn't belong in this space. So you get your sage. I have an abalone shell that I collect the ashes in. I guess I could actually show you my sage with my shell. So something beautiful to catch the sage in, because it gets a little ashy, especially if you have a large bundle like this. Because I do quite a few space clearings, I have large bundles of sage. They come smaller. I think this is magnificent. You know, everybody has their own ritual. Make it your own, as I invited you to do. So you light the sage, and it starts to smoke. That's the smudging. I don't know why it's called smudging, but I like it. I have a visual with it and I think it's great. If it starts to go out, do not blow on the sage. This is something I just learned. Apparently you're blowing your ego into it, so you don't want to do that. So if it starts to go out, or you think it's going to go out, I rarely have ever had it go out, you want to waft it to make sure that it comes back. But usually when you light the sage, it's going to not be a flame, it's really going to just smoke. And then you're going to waft it around the space. And it's going to be the same thing that we had talked about briefly with all the others. It has everything to do with the space in which you want to clear. You're going to want to go the perimeter of the space. You're going to want to go into all the corners. You're going to want to make sure that the doors and the windows are open, and I'm not sure that I had mentioned that earlier. And all the space clearings, you want to make sure the doors and the windows are open, drawers are open, closet doors are open. You want to make sure that you're actually clearing the energy in all the spaces, especially in the murky little corners where things collect. So the sage gets to go into all those corners. So you literally walk around and you're smudging the space. Now, if you have to waft it, you can do it with a piece of paper, or you can do it with something beautiful like a feather. Apparently from the Native Americans, that is a beautiful symbol of making sure that it's going to where you want it to go. And I have a great story of doing a sage clearing for a client who opened a restaurant. And we went through and we started at the front door. We did the entire restaurant back into the coolers and, you know, the air conditioning unit, and it was really interesting, into the basement, and everything was fine. And I said there was only one area I wanted to redo. So I went to the front door. Now the clearing had taken probably 45 minutes. And I go to the front door and I said there was only one area that felt that there was stuck energy. So I went to the front door and I was doing it, and I said, I want to go to the outside. And of course I asked them, because this looks, you know, a little woo-woo and we're in New York City, are you okay with me going outside your restaurant? And he said, totally fine. We walked outside and the sage caught on fire. It's quite amazing. I'm going to say both of the owners who were witnessing this were totally aghast. Both of them like started crying and were like all really excited because they felt like the energy had just been opened up for the space. There was not wind. It's not like wind could all of a sudden make the sage start burning. So I stood there and I watched the entire stick burn down, and just as it got to my fingers, it stopped. It was quite amazing. I was quite amazed. I've done this for a long time. That was my very first time of ever experiencing this. And it was great because their restaurant, which is called Beans Chicken, is doing extremely well. So I'm happy to say that they had a great experience, but it was the first time I saw sage actually catch on fire. So it was an interesting thing to see what it could do after 45 minutes. Right? So the last but not least of the methods that I'm going to share with you guys tonight is one that is a little bit unusual. So the other three have a history. Sage, Native Americans, right, and the Celts and the Druids, and we probably have heard about it. The orange peel, if you're in the Feng Shui world, you definitely have heard about it. Maybe you haven't, but it's a little bit more common. There's a history. Salts, same thing, a big history. The newest one is something that is called sacred sprays. I found these probably close to 10 years ago. I do volunteer work at a hospital. I do reflexology on disabled women. And one of the women who runs the Initiative for Women with Disabilities is a flower essence person. And she introduced me to this gentleman who lives in Alaska, who created these amazing sacred sprays. He was a firefighter in Alaska, like really the last frontier. So beautiful, so pure, so clean. A fairly solitary life. He was a very holistic person, obviously completely in love with nature, and really thrived in that environment and loved it so much. Wanted to figure out a way, and who hasn't said this, how can I bottle this and bring this home, right? You say that feeling sometimes, I want to bottle this and give this to you. So he wanted to bottle the energy of Alaska and give it to people. So he started figuring out a way to do it. And he ended up partnering with some amazing women to create these sacred sprays. And they are botanists and aromatherapists and crystal healers, and they have created this unbelievable synergistic sprays that change the vibration of the spaces in which you live in. I use these all the time. This is a very modern way. I love it because no one knows what you're doing. These are how I sneaky did it in the construction site because they just thought I was clearing the energy. Boy, did they just think I was a girl in my high heels and my dress walking on a construction site spraying. Oh my goodness, awesome. It's great, I could totally get away with it. I loved it because it changes the energy. These, I also can see a residual effect. I can see an immediate effect and a residual one, meaning that if I do it once, it has a really big effect and then I just have to keep topping it up. It's really nice. So I have 3 that I use in sequence. The first one I use is purification. So it just gets rid of the stuff, which is pretty important in a space clearing, right? You want to get rid of the murky stuff. You want to break away all that energy. And the second thing is guardian. At that point, I also say it's really important to think about when you open up, you also want to make sure that, you know, you're safe too. And I loved the fact that he was talking about that. Alaska is one of the final clean environmental energies. And so I think that Stephen, and I'm completely making this my story, wanted there to be a guardian essence to make sure that the positive stays connected. And I loved that because it felt like it was a bookend. So I brought that into my ritual. And then the third one is a little unique. It's calling all angels. Now, I don't know what anybody's spiritual belief is here, but I believe that angels can help us. Whatever your spiritual belief is, ask for help. It took me a long time to grow up enough to ask for help. So I'm like, I'm going to totally do that. The calling all angels was really designed to help children sleep. And I started using it for clients of mine who had children who weren't able to sleep during the construction projects. And it works like a dream. Then I started using it for myself. Then I added it into my clearing ritual. Felt like it ended up being the most perfect triad of using it during the space ritual, the space clearing ritual. And just like the other 3, you do it in the room, you do it in the corners, you do it in the murky space. You're going to spray at the heaven, you're going to spray at the human, and you're going to spray at the earth. And it connects it all together. They smell lovely, too. They're not particularly overwhelming. They're not strong, perfumey smells. They end up really helping people change their energy. Said I've seen it in contractors, which is really, frankly, amazing to me, having witnessed contractors shift their energy during a construction project. So I have handouts available for all of those. And I wanted to see if anyone had any questions specifically about any of these rituals right now. There will be time to do a Q&A, and I'm going to be wandering around afterwards. Because what I really want to do in a minute is to take us through a meditation. If everybody's open to closing their eyes for a minute and not falling asleep on me, and asking yourself to figure out which one of these, if any, would be something that you would be interested in having and owning for your own space clearing ritual. As I said, I've taken 4 and I've made them mine. I have a habit of creating something that fits with my belief system. I think it's important for you to do the same thing. But if one of these would suit you, maybe I'll take you through a meditation and maybe you can own one of these at the end of the session. See which one fits right with you. But before I go into the meditation, does anybody have any questions that they wanted to ask about the processes themselves and the methods? Yes?
Is there a wrong way to do it?
Good question. Is there a wrong way to do it? No. There is no right. There is no wrong. It's all It's all perfect. The power of your intention, from my belief system, is everything that matters. So spraying it 3 times instead of 2 times, or walking clockwise versus counterclockwise, not part of the belief system in which I come from. So no, I think that you can't mess up. Doing a space clearing anyway is going to be a good way.
In using it for example, client's apartment. In other words, if you're used to doing it for yourself or clearing yourself, and now you're working on your own, you're working into a new environment, whether you're going for a listing, let's say, and you go, oh boy, you know, I don't know, this is what I'm going to do with this. Just pick the one that you like the best.
Absolutely.
And not freak them out if they're there, because I mean, you know, do pick the one you feel more comfortable with in clearing their space, or is it just you walk in and just, you know?
That's an excellent
'Cause,
question.
I mean, somebody with their sage, I've done the sage clearing. Some, you know, I know that some clients, you know, are just going to go, what the hell is this, you know?
Totally, totally.
You know that.
And I'm going to say it's all about context, really. You have to use your judgment in regards to it. That's really why the sprays it came into my existence, I believe, because I could use them in a space that needed help, that I didn't feel that it was appropriate to do something that was going to be considered woo-woo. So I live in a world where, you know, we all live in a world that's very physical, right? And not necessarily, I mean, into spiritual things. You know, can very easily get categorized. You know, luckily I don't look like a granola cruncher, and I'm not walking around chiming my bells. You know, not that there's anything wrong with that, but that somehow puts me into a very small category. So if you're walking around with sage, you can have people judge you very quickly. You also can set off fire alarms.
Changing energy also, how, I mean, there are all kinds of things, you know, that.
And
So
that
that's important, even if the place is phenomenal, it's just that energy sometimes.
And you know, it's interesting, a lot of spaces like that have a lot of people flowing through them, you might want to do that. I think baking bread, tricks of the trade, right, and putting vanilla candles, which I have heard real estate people have been talking about doing that for years, has a lot to do with the idea of changing the energy in a space, but they didn't really understand it. The nice thing about the sprays is they have a little bit of a scent, but they do not have a total overwhelming scent. So it's not like it's going to be something that's going to end up making people notice a lot, like sage.
Oh, sages, you know,
Right?
you're gonna know it in the next building, you know, the next floor or something.
And the salt is the second one. So when I work with corporate clients, I have a client who inherited a staff member who was very negative, and she was pulling down the energy of the entire team, and he finally had to get rid of her. But he said he couldn't even walk into her cubicle. What I really love about this story is that he is so not woo-woo. He called me because his sister had told him about me. And he said, I'm desperate. I don't know what to do. I can't walk into her cubicle. And she's not even there anymore. And it was in the middle of an office space. You know, there were lots of cubicles. His office, you know, was here, and her cubicle was out. And he's like, this is a problem if I don't want to go near the cubicle that my main assistant is going to sit in. And I don't want my new assistant to come into a space that I think is disgusting. It was amazing. So I gave him the salts and the sprays. The salt to suck up the energy for a week while he was away before the new person came in, and throw away those salts, and then to do this regularly. Happy to say, he said when he came back from Italy, the juju was gone or whatever, you know, he's like, no more murky energy. So, and he could leave a dish of salt without anybody thinking he was too crazy. If he had walked in with a sage stick, you know, not only setting off alarms, I'm pretty sure that they would have been like, oh my God, the guy's lost it. Which is sad, but we live in a corporate world, right? That people do still place us into very fine boxes. I mean, I feel incredibly blessed that I can have one foot in both places. I can be very corporate, talk the architectural world, and I can also be very woo-woo, you know, and I believe that part of my mission in my life is to actually be the blending of the two of them so I can keep it open. I work very hard to talk to my audience from where they can hear me the most from. It's a little bit interesting when I have an audience of a varied level, and I haven't met all of you intimately, so I don't know, you know, how many of you are, you know, what your spiritual basis is and, you know, your corporate basis is. So I'm kind of doing a more of a broad brush in this. And so I think that you would need to follow your own instincts. Like my clients invite me in, it's different because then I can, you know, then I'm open to doing anything, you know, any of this stuff. But in a corporate environment, I tend to use the salts or the sprays. You know, follow your intuition, your kind of guts. The nice thing with the salts too, you have the variety of the elements to think about. So that gives you a whole other kind of level of thinking about, do they need to have, you know, bring the fire energy in? Do they need to have the, you know, the earth energy? Like what's going on in the situation to allow you to think, what needs to be shifted here? And that always comes into thinking about your intention. Like, what is it? Like I knew very specifically the gentleman, I ended up do a lot of dowsing. So for him, we used air. So I ended up giving him air as the salt, right, to open up the space. He wanted space. He was feeling heavy, murky energy, so we wanted to lift it. So when the salts took the energy away, the murky energy, he said the space he could breathe, which is what I had wanted. The intention for us that we had set together was for that. So it's kind of a fun extra. Is anyone else? Oh.
I have people in my life that could use this more than I mean, I could use it too, but that I think could use it a lot. You need their buy-in. Can you sneak into their space? Like
Oh, what a great question.
like my parents, they're in their 90s. They could use space for their etc. You know what I mean.
I totally hear you. I love the question. So I'm going to be very transparent with you. When I started doing space clearings, I didn't ask people. I went into their space as a designer. I was invited into their home to do work for them, and I knew that they needed help, that the energy of the construction project was making us fight, making them fight. I mean, I'm a marriage counselor. If you've ever watched a construction project, you know, you have to be a mediator. So it's like, I don't want to be a marriage counselor, I want to be a designer. So how can I change this? So I went into the spaces that I felt in my gut that I was doing help for them without asking their permission. I think that there is a level of integrity that only you can answer about where those spaces are going to be best done. If you feel like you are going to end up stepping on their energetic toes in a way that is not going to be good, if it's a space in which you work in, you are a participant in, maybe you do the clearing on yourself and bring it in that way. So I think that it needs to be balanced or thought about on a situation by situation basis. You know, parents, personally, you're connected to them. You came from them. To me, I would read that as you have a bit of a right to help them in the same way that I was invited to help my clients.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Have you recognized any efficacy bringing this in to people who are sick?
I think that is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. When they are open for that, it is beautiful. There are some people who aren't open to it. And it's interesting because I have had almost more people where the energy in the home where somebody is sick needs to be cleaned for the people who aren't sick. Does that make sense? So with that, I often help them clear them. And then they go into the space and that helps them manage their energy. Does that make sense? I work with disabled women, and I'm going to say this. I am always honored and astounded by how incredibly gorgeous they are and alive and love their life. And most of them are deformed, in pain. And I walk away and I am incredibly humbled every single time. There's a certain energy about that is beautiful. All those ladies, space clearing, reflexology, they do it all, and they're happy to have that done. So, and the irony is they don't need it. You know what I mean? Like they don't need a lot of space clearing because they're like so alive and taking charge of their life and accepting where they are. So it's an interesting thing. I think bringing it into households where there is a heavy, murky energy is very, very powerful. The trick is getting invited in. Anybody else have any questions? Great. So how would you guys think about doing a meditation with me? Would you be willing to play with me a little bit? Excellent. So why don't you take everything off of your laps. Get yourself comfy and cozy. For a woman who wears high heels, I also say put both your feet on the ground. I know, because I don't like to do that either. Bless you. So great, I'm going to ask you guys to close your eyes. I want you to take a deep breath. Flow in, pull air all the way in, straight down through your lungs into the bottom of your belly. Let it out. Take another deep, full breath, filling yourself up. Release. Take a third deep breath. And let it out. And what I'd like you to do now is to picture in your mind the space in which you want to be clear. Whether it's your home or your office or a specific room, whatever it is for you, I want you to clearly picture it. Be able to see it in full living color. All the details. Once you have that space, I want you to think back to your intention and why you want this space to be clear. What is it that you want to get rid of? That you want to let go of? Think about that. Think about the words that you wrote down. Get it into your heart how important it is to create the space so you can live your authentic life. Knowing that this residual energy does not serve you anymore. That there's no right or wrong, but it's time to let go. Hold on to that intention with the visual of the space that you want to be clear and bright, just like that gorgeous future we're coming towards. And now I want you to think, which one of the 4 methods would serve you best to meet the goal of cleaning that space of that energy? Do you want to use the sacred salts that are going to absorb all the energy that doesn't belong there so you can have the space? Or are you going to use the orange peel ceremony, where the fresh citrus is going to completely absorb, remove, and negate anything that doesn't serve you? Or the sage, the beautiful smudging ceremony, where the smoke is going to go into every nook and cranny of the space, replacing the negative energy with positive, clear, white energy. Or last but not least, are you going to do the sacred sprays from Alaska? The sprays that come in a trio purification and guardian, and then calling all angels. Which one of these 4 do you feel in your heart is going to serve you the best? It is really important to make sure that you feel totally congruent and comfortable with the clearing ritual that you make your own. And also know that this can change. There is no right or wrong. This could just be your space clearing ritual for this particular space clearing. You are open to changing your mind anytime. I invite you to make a decision, to make a commitment to yourself right here, right now, to clear the energy specifically in that space so you can go on to the life that you're meant to lead. The energy in which we have just all lived through in New York needs to be cleared. We want to break free of anything that is holding us back. So with that commitment to your life, making space so you can lead exactly where you want to go, I invite you now to make that decision of which one you're going to choose. Take a deep breath, center yourself, thank yourself, send gratitude out. You can open your eyes. Thank you so much. Anybody want to share what their particular experience was during that? I see a couple great faces right now. Because I'd love to hear if anybody has had a solid feeling of any of those methods that I've shared with you that mean something to you now.
I think the salt would work for me, but I can also see how everything else can work for me because I need a lot of clarity. And just in going through that, I'm afraid to go home.
Bring some spray with you, no problem.
I'm just as feeling, I mean, I know I have so much stuff to clear away that I believe it's going to help me tremendously.
Well, that sounds amazing, and we will make sure that you go home with some tools to do that, and we will protect you so you can feel safe going home in the storm. But that the first step in the commitment is beautiful, and knowing the salts may be perfect for the first clearing.
Yeah, well, like I said, I think everything's going to work. I like the sage, and I like the oranges I'm not so sure about, but the other three were definitely calling to me. So.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much. Excellent. Anyone else?
I had a good visualization. I have a 15 and 12-year-old daughter. They're some of the ones that I would like to buy into the clearing.
Excellent.
Have the same level of intention that I have around their possessions. But I had this thought that we should do an orange. They love oranges. Sort of like create this game where we're going to do this clearing of your space with oranges, but we have to clean it first.
Oh, I get where you're coming from. Teenagers in their room. Yeah. Oh, that's excellent.
So, and I would like to. I like all of them, but that would be fun to do with the girls.
I love that, Bob. That's fantastic. That's very creative, too. Get them into a game to think about it. Cleaning the room, yeah, that might take a couple efforts, but fantastic. That's so cool.
It's expensive.
Anybody else? Great. Well, thank you so much. I wanted to say that we've got the worksheets over there for anybody who wants to have it written down, because I'm going to say, as much of a talker as I am, there are a couple details I think I may have left out. And I want to honor the fact that it's snowing, I think, still. Maybe not. Anyways, I know that there was some transportation stuff that was going on energetically in the city. So I'm making sure that the workshop is a little bit shorter than originally intended, because I don't want to have anybody stranded, as nice as this space is and as fun as a slumber party would be. I think that we might all want to go home to our own spaces now that we've got new eyes to look at it. But I'll open up if there are any other questions. I'm going to be wandering around. There are some interesting options if you do want to walk away with any tools. We've got some stuff here. I'm also happy to share with you places that you can go and research your own to find them, because it's a really great opportunity for you to take ownership of thinking about how your spaces affect you. As a holistic designer, this is my life's work. My mission is to make sustainability the norm, using holistic design to create spaces that enhance and enrich individuals, our community, and the environment. That's me. That's my goal. To realize that vision is to really make sure that we have authentic relationships, better work-life balance, all about the harmony thing, and to have happy, healthy people. I believe spaces can do that, and clear spaces can do that a whole bunch faster. So thank you so much for spending time and letting me talk about something that I think is so important and that I love doing. And I hope that it's a little bit of a gift from me to you. And if you want to keep talking, I'm very happy to have you guys join me in a dialogue one-on-one. I also have a blog and a website and all that social media stuff out there. So if you want to follow what I'm doing, I have some great designers working with me that are helping this mission become a reality. And we are coming at it in a really holistic, approach on helping people become more aware of every part of their life so they can live better, richer, because I believe that when they get that, they're going to show up in a way that's going to change the world. And we're at a pivotal moment. Great. Thank you.